I went out with my now wife of 21 years on a first date, went to kiss her goodnight and elbowed her right in the face. She still took my calls after that. I once showed up to a date, 10 of her friends were there with her, and they had no idea I was coming. She was blackout wasted and introduced me as Tom. When I corrected her, she said, "Oh yeah, Tom is tomorrow night." He put his phone down on the table and it was covered in tape. When I asked why his phone is taped up, he said because the government is always listening. Met this guy online. We meet at Starbucks. He was 10 minutes late, awkwardly paid for my coffee, and I had to coax him into a conversation. We talked about science and religion and humanity, and he said, "I wasn't expecting you to be intelligent." Guy brought his 2 kids along so we could get to know each other a family, asked when I had Eve free to help his daughter with her homework, and if we could have the next date nearer where I lived so he could bring his laundry round. I met a girl a little younger than me. She told me to meet her at her grandma's house for the date. I got there and the girl wasn't there. She set me up with her grandma. Stubbed my toe walking into the bar to meet him and had to leave once I realized my shoe had filled with blood. After I couldn't get the bleeding to stop, I spent 8 hours in the ER for a broken toe that needed 10 stitches. Still got a second date though. On my first date with my now wife, she walked into the restaurant and proceeded to walk around the whole place because she had forgotten what I looked like. I eventually waved her down after letting her walk and look around for 5 minutes. Tried to be an independent woman by walking quickly ahead of him and getting into the car parked out front before he could open the door for me. He knocked on the window and yelled through the glass, "This isn't my car!" The guy accidentally texted me instead of his mate about how the date was going, saying he regretted asking me out. We both checked our phones at the same time. There was an awkward silence for the rest of the ride. Hit her with my car, enough said. Went to wrong house and an elderly couple made me come in and watch TGF with them while they searched for phone books so I could call my date for her address. Pre-cell phone era. I once took a girl to a local pizza place for our first date. She proceeded to cover her slice of pizza in garlic powder and looked at me and said, "This is just in case you were planning on kissing me later." Met a guy from at Tinder and we ended the night at his ex-wife's house where I drunkenly helped her pick out a wedding dress for her upcoming marriage to someone else. First date in high school, we were out at dinner and I kept on feeling something funny in my sweater. My date commented on my fidgeting and was completely shocked as I reached up my sleeve to pull out a pair of my mom's panties. Now I do my own laundry. Was out on a date with a guy who said he had no money and borrowed $10 to buy a drink at a convenience store. Came back with a scratch off, won $60 and took me home since I wouldn't go to the strip club with his winnings. My first date and my first time at a sushi place, I decided to order 13 rolls. I thought rolls meant individual pieces of sushi. Let's just say I was embarrassed when we had to have 2 tables pushed together just to hold them all. One time, I took a girl to the movies. During the movie, she kept looking at the person behind her. Turns out, her dad was sitting behind us the entire time. As we were saying goodbye, she thanked me for taking her to the movies, and I said something like, "Yeah, I didn't have anything else to do. Next month will be our 3rd wedding anniversary." Had a nice dinner and saw a movie. On the way back to my house, he put me out on the highway because I didn't want to have sex. My mom had to pick me up from a gas station. On a first date, the guy asked me to smell his food because he thought it might be bad, then pushed my face in it. One and done. Spilled soda on my crotch while pulling into her driveway. My first words when she answered the door were, "It's not pee." While at dinner, I couldn't decide between the sea bass and the salmon, so I asked the waiter, "How is your semen?" Absolutely mortifying. I met a guy online and we saw a movie on our first date. At the end of the night, when acting like he was going in for a kiss, he put his whole mouth over my nose and blew into it. Laughing, he says he does this to his dogs and calls it a puppy trumpet. Well, yes I have, and didn't even know it was a date. The plan was going to Vikings game. I thought it was with more PPL, but no. So with paint on my face and a Vicks jersey, he sends the meeting location. I walk into a 5-star candlelit restaurant he's formally dressed. My date let me out of the car to wait on the curb while he parallel parked. After 3 failed attempts, he drove off. I walked home. As a senior in college, I asked a cute girl out. Halfway through the date, she told me that she was seriously thinking of becoming a nun after graduation in a few weeks. By the end of the date, she told me I helped her decide to take the plunge. The waiter came over and looked confused. He turned to my date and asked, "When did you stop being gay? We had a date last night." When a guy who I just started seeing and was a funeral director picked me up with a body in the back of the car and said, "We just need to make a quick stop at my office." I had just been diagnosed with an ulcer and was put on medicine to clear my stomach. Farted and burped the whole time. I was so embarrassed. He still married me. We stopped by his family's barbecue on the way to our date and found out we were third cousins. In college, got invited to a girl's house for a home-cooked meal. Recipe called for 2 cloves of garlic. She used 2 heads of garlic, sweated out garlic for a month. All's well, that ends well. Married almost 30 years. Still can't cook, though. He picked me up to go see a movie. I picked the movie. We arrived and he found out it was rated R. He freaked and told me he had to call his mom to get permission to watch it. He did. She said no. Date ended. We were both 21. I was really into this guy, but I was so nervous. Well, this is our first conversation. Guy, you smell good. Me, thanks. I use both of my nostrils. He took me to a restaurant and went to the bathroom a lot and stepped out often to take calls. I thought it was weird, and then the waiter said, "You know he's at another table with a blonde woman, right? He had 2 first dates at once." On our first date, my husband choked on an omelet and blew an onion out of his nose. I married him anyway. He brought his parents. He was 25. If that's not bad enough, halfway through the meal, his mom asked me if I was going to finish mine while taking tinfoil out of her bag to wrap up my food for her to take home. In college, a friend set me up on a blind date. I wasn't in a great mood because I had received a traffic ticket a few hours before. My day got worse when my blind date turned out to be the cop who gave me the ticket. I went to a fancy restaurant thinking I was looking quite cute. When I introduced myself at the bar, my date said, "I thought you'd be thinner." I grabbed his drink, poured it in his lap, said, "I thought you'd be smarter." I left and ate pizza that night. I met a girl for a blind date once. She didn't say a single word throughout dinner, finished her meal, and walked out. I then checked my phone and there was a MSG from the girl saying she couldn't make it tonight. Who the hell did I eat with?